I would like to begin this next session by acknowledging the land on which we are hosting this virtual event. I am currently at the Annex Business Media office in Toronto, Canada. We are in the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We wanted to acknowledge the Indigenous history of this land as we enter into some thoughtful conversations about how the aquaculture industry continues to work with its indigenous neighbors. So now I'd like to welcome my colleague and associate editor of Aquaculture North America, Shaitan Morituwan, to introduce this panel on Indigenous stewardship. Welcome, Shaitan.
Thank you, Jean. My name is Shaitan Morituwan, Associate Editor of the Aquaculture North America magazine, and I'll be moderating the Indigenous Stewardship panel. This panel will present women working within aquaculture companies to discuss their roles and impact. As government regulators are banning net pen farming in British Columbia waters, it's important to discuss what this will mean for the Indigenous communities and the way forward. In this panel, we have Nellie Atleo, Human Resources Personnel, Tlaoquiap First Nations, Don Madabi Leach, General Manager of the Wabitec Business Development Corporation, Erin Latham, Natural Resources Specialist, Wewakam First Nations. Welcome, three of you. It's lovely to have each and every one of you here. So we'll have an opportunity for the audience to ask their questions to our panelists at the end. So send them on the chat as they speak, and I'll keep an eye out for them. But first, let's start with some introductions. I'll throw this question to the three of you, but I'll start with Nellie, Dawn, and then Erin. Please tell us about the work you do for the Indigenous aquaculture industry.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the organizers for putting this together. I come to you from Tlaoquiap First Nations. I'm Nellie Atleo. I'm from Tlaoquiap First Nations. I have had the opportunity to spend 11 years in the aquaculture industry, where I worked with a couple of different companies and had the opportunity to learn a lot about the aquaculture industry in my work, which involved a lot of recruitment. In one of them, I had was able to, work on a recruitment and retention plan for the Indigenous communities. Helping get First Nations folks the qualifications that they needed to work in the industry, training and support them in their journey into the industry, being able to educate them on what it is that this work entails, teaching them how to, teaching them, the world of aquaculture and seafood and being able to feed the world, because as we know, the world population is growing and we need to continue to be able to feed them and do it in a sustainable manner while working closely with the Indigenous people. And I've seen a lot of work being done for the Indigenous folks and, with growth and being able to work and stay home and support their families. But yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nellie. And you, Don.
So for me, my name is Dawn Madabi Leach, and I am from Manitoulin Island in Northern Ontario. Manitoulin is the largest freshwater island in the world. So it's very beautiful. You feel like you're floating on air when you're on a boat. You could see clear down to the bottom of the lakes. It's beautiful. And I'm speaking to you today from Treaty 1 in Manitoba. And so I'm taking doing this panel from Central Canada. And I have been involved for many years working with First Nation-owned aquaculture operations in and around Manitoulin Island. And in the past, for the past 10 years, our organization has been delivering an aquaculture program for First Nations across Central Canada. So that's, we don't work on the east or west coast, but we work in the whole area in between. And we deliver an aquaculture program that helps our communities who are interested in this kind of business. And it's kind of a natural add-on to Indigenous businesses because fisheries is always really important to us. So the having a program like this to support the growing of fish and the restocking of lakes, building hatcheries, processing plants, and aquaculture operations has been part of what we've done for the past 30 years in our region. So we're really pleased to participate and share some of the good work that we have done on a national basis here in Canada.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dawn. And you, Erin?
Hi, good. It's morning for me, so good morning. I'm calling in from Liquido, from the traditional territories of the Liquido people in Campbell River, British Columbia. And yeah, my role with the Weebekam First Nation as their natural resource administrator. So aquaculture actually represents sort of just a portion of my job portfolio. But I've been educated in aquaculture by First Nations in British Columbia through academics. I was doing a PhD and working up on North Vancouver Island. And I've been able to work with and fortunate to work with several communities on the coast and understand how we can better align the aquaculture industry with First Nations interests and values. And yeah, so I think I'm motivated in my current work to work with the existing transitions of the industry, the policy environment, but really grounded in community interests and community values.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Well said. And to Nelly, personally, how would you see you advocate for aquaculture in your First Nation?
I have quite a bit of family that work in the industry and have gained a lot of connections within the industry. And one of the things that I've been able to do and is talk to people who and kind of try educate them on what the industry is about and how you know, the companies are sustainably raising salmon, and you know, just being able to educate and talk to these people about what it is that they do and how they do it sustainably. I try to maintain those relationships and just try to get them to have another outlook on what it is and how we're doing it positively, and then, you know, listening to their concerns as well. And then, you know, just sharing of information and helping people get their foot in the door to the industry, because some people come to me with questions on what it is that they need to start their career within the aquaculture industry. And then, you know, preparing their family, because some of the jobs are camp-based as well. And it might be an adjustment for them, especially, you know, Indigenous people who have big families, to work camp-based jobs, and then, you know, opportunities that are out there that aren't camp-based, from freshwater to processing operations. And then, yeah, that's about what I do right now.
Awesome. And just to follow up on that, are there any highlights in your career so far with regards to, you know, advocating for the industry?
Highlights for me would include being able to travel and share with, you know, university students and Indigenous folks what it is that the aquaculture industry entails. And, you know, seeing the First Nations recruitment and retention policies and stuff really, you know, grow and support the First Nations industry. That's something I've really appreciated, because, you know, having 11 years in the industry, it's been an amazing like growth opportunity, and see what it is, you know, being able to feed the family while contributing to feeding the world, right? So that's a highlight for me.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll throw the same question to you, Dawn. How do you personally advocate for aquaculture in your nation?
Mhm. Well, let me say that before aquaculture operations were already established in our region, uh, but Ontario had thankfully had put a moratorium on some aquaculture developments. So, but these businesses were starting to set up close to our communities, and our communities became really concerned about this because they had no idea, what was happening, what kind of feed was being put into the water, and what the impacts were, and the mortality rates. Because we used to have, you know, um, fish floating up onto our shores in our communities. So one of the things that the communities asked us to do is to develop we call a Gigo Chinook Nagawin, which is a great fish law, and that our communities could implement, because many of our communities now are exercising the jurisdiction that they have in our traditional areas, including our traditional waterways, because we're very reliant on the water, and the fisheries is really important to us. So we drafted this new law that is adopted by each First Nation individually to exercise their jurisdiction in their traditional areas. So that was one of the ways that we advocated for them. The other thing that we did is we helped them to develop the tools and templates. We have, for example, for those First Nations that are interested in starting or expanding their existing aquaculture businesses, we have tools and templates to help them with all the processes that they need to do, with all the job descriptions related to aquaculture, um, the reporting mechanisms, and how we need to do all of this. So we developed all of those templates for our communities to help them in the work that they need to do, so they don't have to spend the money to develop that type of work and do it over and over and over again. So we have a template that we provide. And we're in the process now of developing an Indigenous Center of Excellence on aquaculture. So this Indigenous Center of Excellence on aquaculture is going to be a support to the businesses that are in this industry, so that we can provide advice, especially to communities who are implementing that law, the Gigo Chinook Nagawin law. So the Center of Excellence will be able to go and be a independent party doing water testing. Currently, aquaculture operations do their own testing, but we wanted to have a third party do the arm's length water testing, water quality, and all different kinds of testing. So this Center of Excellence will be able to do that. And then finally, the other thing that we do to advocate and to support our communities is we host workshops, information workshops, so that they on the industry, so that the communities can make informed decisions on this. So we're always doing this, and we have great agriculture technicians on staff who are providing these services. So we do a lot of work to support our communities and to actually, one of the things under this law, they'll be regulating all the activity, aquaculture activity in their traditional territories. And what I like about it is that the non-Indigenous aquaculture operations are in support of this. They like what we're doing. So this is like a win-win, and the governments like what we're doing by developing this. So it's been a great step going forward for Indigenous communities and interested in this industry.
That's great. And I really look forward to the Center of Excellence. Are you able to provide more information as to when that will become fully functional?
We have the business plan ready, and we're just trying to finalize a potential location, so that then we will be looking at financing that. Again, Wabatech, just in general, provides business financing to Indigenous businesses in our service area. So we'd be able to help with that, but we're looking at leveraging other dollars from other sources for the center. but we just needed to finalize the location first. We have the estimated costs already, so we're just doing in the process of. It's just at the preliminary stages, but the business plan has been done, and we have some interested parties looking at the locations right now.
Awesome. That's cool. Well, I look forward to it. Now to Erin, how would you describe local nations relationships with aquaculture partners?
Yeah, pretty foundational to creating space for First Nations and Indigenous communities to advance their interests in aquaculture. I just want to hold up, the work of Dawn and her Wabatek and Nation partners, as well as Nellie's regional councils, and the importance of nation traditional laws as providing foundation to move forward in aquaculture and reconcile this modern industry with community values and community interests. I think a lot of work has been done in the last 5-10 years to create space for First Nations interests and create actually a policy environment for First Nations and Indigenous communities to engage in national aquaculture policy and development and futures. This is some of the work that I carry forward and when I enter community work. Right now, we're in the last 5 to 10 years, we're just trying to deal with this aquaculture controversy and entrenched positions and some misinformation and misconceptions in the industry. And so through our salmon farming partners, there's been openness to creating more space and opportunity for nations to have a stronger voice with our federal and provincial government counterparts, and in Ottawa, where there's a lot of decision making that happens. So the salmon farm companies have really kind of created some space and created opportunities to have some conversations with governments, and now nations are really stepping forward and taking strong leads. The First Nations, or the Coalition for First Nations, Finfish Stewardship, is one organization that's providing a counter narrative and creating space for First Nations to start to lead the sector and educate our government counterparts. So I think that there's, in the last few years, I think there's a big change in our governance of the aquaculture industry, and that's largely through advocacy and the roles of the Canadian Aquaculture Industry Association, or CAIA. And I know that we've got a lot of champions in DFO and in our provincial government that see this future, but really trying to appeal to the Canadian public and where the votes are coming from, and trying to convince that the conversation is First Nations leadership in the future for the sector. And speaking to what Dawn was saying with the Center of Excellence, nations are asserting their rights as environmental authorities. And the Center of Excellence, I know that we're working on several nations providing regional Center of Excellence centers across the country. In our local area, we're looking at building an Indigenous science center that's based on anti-colonial sciences, that provides nation leadership, nation decision-making based on their cultural traditions and reconciling modern science methods. And that will help build, new information and confidence in information around the sector, around the science of the sector, and building hopefully better trust to have a future in the sector and not shut down aquaculture due to misperceptions out there, misconceptions.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Just because we're talking about advocacy for women and everyone, are there women, and I'll throw this to all of you, are there women who work in aquaculture within your region?
There are, definitely. We have, for example, one of our longest running aquaculture operations that's been in operation for over 35 years. It's owned by a First Nation individual man, and he's been working with closely with his granddaughter to take over the business. So she's been pretty much running a lot of the well, all aspects of the business, and it's really great to see that. And some more women are getting involved in the in this industry. But when it comes to, I'm seeing more women in the hatcheries and the processing plants, more so than actually the on the growing of the fish. There are a few, but that's in our area. That's primarily where I see women engaged, and of course, women like ourselves working in the promotion of aquaculture. I think is um, where you see a lot of our involvement.
Mm. Mm. Awesome, thanks. And Nelly?
Yeah, there is more and more women working in the industry in my area. In one of my previous workplaces, one of the things that we wanted to do was increase the opportunity for women to work in the industry and be able to support them. So one thing that we did was to ask the women that were already working for us what it is that we could do to improve the experience for women working in the saltwater operations. That's was primarily my focus. You know, what could we have done better during the recruitment process? What could we have done better during the onboarding process to support you in your camp-based work job, or if it was going in and out, just to make their life easier, because it can be challenging for the women to work in the camp-based job, just supporting their families. So one of the things that I was able to do was increase the women in the industry from, I think it was like 3% of the employment up to 18% present, having female presence on there. And yeah, it's definitely increasing, just to be able to, because it can be physically demanding. So there were some things that were done to be able to support women, to be able to do the same tasks as, the men out on the farms. So, yeah.
Okay, and you, Erin?
Yeah, I see there's been a change in recent years. Definitely lots of new emerging women leaders in the aquaculture sector. Particularly, I see it in salmon farming, and they are occupying higher levels of directorships and management levels as well. I think there's still a lot of room and work to be done to increasing BIPOC and Indigenous and women representation in throughout job roles across the sector. I think it seems like the marine plant and seaweed sector is drawing lots of attention from young women workers as well. So I think it's promising, but I think there's still work to be done.
Absolutely. That was going to be sort of like my follow-up question to that. What would you say the future of women working in, the aquaculture industry and Indigenous community is?
I could start with that. I've heard from some of my community members that aquaculture has a strong Mother Nature sort of tending stewardship resonance, and so perhaps it draws maybe more of a women demographic to do the husbandry of fish and aquatic plants and animals. So that's interesting, and I embrace that there's a future there, and there should be more opportunities and more entry opportunities. And I'm really interested in Ellie's work as far as recruitment and bringing people along. We haven't really talked about youth yet, but some of our work in communities is really focused on youth and getting them involved in fisheries and hatcheries and things that are accessible to them, and hopefully we can bring up the next generation and have them start getting into stewardship and aquaculture.
Beautiful. What about you, Nelly?
Yeah, I see lots of opportunities for women and Indigenous women in the industry. my daughter just turned 18 not long ago, and she has like, I have a brother who's worked in the aquaculture industry for probably almost 20 years now. And so she's kind of been educated in that. So she's a strong supporter in aquaculture. Since she was 3, she's wanted to be a marine biologist. And she's had plenty of opportunity to be able to, you know, tour salmon farms, and not just her, but some of her friends as well, and tour, you know, hydrolyzers and hatcheries as well, to be able to learn about what opportunities are out there for her. And so seeing that through her eyes has been amazing, not only through my connections, but her connections alone. Right now she works for an aquarium. It's been her first job where she's training to be an aquarist, and they're helping her, you know, see what opportunities are out there for marine biology. And unfortunately, their viewpoint on aquaculture is kind of negative where she works. So she comes home all the time talking to me about her discussions that she has from what she's learned from my brother and I, and, you know, other family members that work in the industry. So she's talked to several people. So seeing that through her eyes has been amazing. And then even working in the industry, being able to support women, to educate them on, you know, husbandry and what that entails, and how we can support them during their employment, and then, you know, advancing them. It was amazing to be able to see women advance into management positions as well. And I see that growing still. So that's been awesome too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think what you just said really ties into the first panel with Sage, you know, the work that they're doing, just trying to see women get into these, you know, C-suite positions in aquaculture. So thank you all so much. I'll throw this question to Dawn. You know, the aquaculture industry has faced a lot of opposition recently, including the ban of net pens in many areas where indigenous aquaculture takes place. What can you share about your own experiences in your community?
Well, one of the things that, you know, first of all, I want to say, definitely, you know, we're hearing this about the net pens, and that's why it's really, really important, like Erin has said, to incorporate the science. And to what we're doing is we have a committee that's working together on developing the environmental regulations that would be implemented through our Indigenous Center of Excellence on aquaculture, so that and that's, by the way, where I see a lot of opportunity for women, is in the science side of things here, to really help out with this. But one of the things for sure is that we need to have good information, combining science and traditional knowledge of our people. And we've had people telling us what to do for many years in our own traditional territories. And right now we want to make those decisions ourselves. So oftentimes, I think that the aquaculture industry doesn't or those against it haven't seen the latest developments in the types of feed that's used, you know, and how it's really monitored how much feed you use as well, and the testing that's done, and actually some of the benefits that are derived from having net pen operations. But we know that aquaculture just isn't about open net pens. We also have a growing interest in the land-based RAS systems by most of the Indigenous community, especially in the prairies where you don't have a lot of lakes. So we are actually working with several First Nation communities with land-based systems there. And our own, even though we're around the largest freshwater island in the world, we're also looking at land-based as well in our community. So there's a lot going in that direction. So, realizing that that's important, but all of the elements, whether it's the hatcheries, the growing of the fish, the processing of the fish. Another big area is aquaponics that our communities and by the way, women are getting into aquaponics as a food security issue. So I think that that's something that we want to support more of. We have small aquaponics operations. But we know that transportation, we have to look at the footprint caused by that. And so we're looking at all of these elements. People forget that when they're talking to us, we're the ones most impacted and live off the water in our areas. So we're going to be most protective of it. We don't want environmentalists or cottagers to tell us what to do. We're the ones who live every day on the water. So we're most interested in making sure that water resource is secure for us. That's why we developed our own law in the first place, because water is one of our sacred elements, our sacred medicines. And so we want to protect it. So I think we have a more vested interest than anybody else out there in making sure that the water is protected for our future generations. That's really important to us. So when we're advocating, it's only because we've done the homework. We know the kinds of systems that we want in place that's going to be good for us, and making sure that our water is protected, but also making sure that we can provide food for our people. And I think that that's those are major things, and I think it's up to us to make those kinds of decisions when it impacts us primarily.
No, I agree with a lot of what, and can mimic a lot of what Dawn said in regards to we should be involved in the decision making for what is going on in our waters, because we do live here, right? And we've been here for many, many, many years. And I know that it's what they do. I've been able to learn about what it is that they do out on the waters, how it's done sustainably, being able to learn and take in the science portion of what it is. And I know that not a lot of people know that they have that opportunity to learn or be able to walk into one of the companies and say, hey, I'd love a tour, because they would happily tour them around a farm and show them what it is. And they may, take in certain things during, a one-day visit and then think, oh, hey, like that was really amazing. And I'd love, the opportunity to work and learn more about what it is that they do in my traditional territory. Because they're usually pretty open about being able to tour and show them what it is that they do in our waters, and how they, and teach them the science portion of it as well. So yeah, and just being able to educate how they're doing it sustainably and how it impacts, our environment and stuff like that.
I just wanted to say I've been on some tours out your way.
Yeah.
Okay. In case, anyone didn't know this, the theme for this year's WINNA Summit is advocacy. So we've been asking a lot of questions about advocacy, but I would like to ask this, how does aquaculture advocacy come into play in Indigenous stewardship? I'll start with Erin.
Sure. So I've spoken to it a little bit. I think the roles of First Nations really asserting their environmental authorities and that space for those conversations to help educate our Crown government counterparts has been so important. The future of aquaculture, this net pen transition and the recent direction that we're still waiting on a transition plan from the government, and it's very unclear as far as what this future is. But the language around moving towards closed containment provides opportunities for nations, whether it's closed containment technologies, engaging in the environmental monitoring and the benefits of how those technologies are having to wild fish and to the farm operations. Nations are going to be at the forefront in documenting and recording that and communicating that out to the public. So we really need to build capacity for First Nation organizations, for the Coalition for Finfish Stewardship, and create space and create that opportunity for nations to be part of that information gathering and communications. We're working on an Indigenous Center of Aquatic Health Sciences and Stewardship, or ICAWS, in Campbell River, which will be a dialogue and training center for nations to do aquatic and marine sciences. Again, embracing anti-colonial science and providing that, embracing the stewardship roles of nations, using modern technologies and relying on traditional laws as well that will give guidance in a kind of place-based information knowledge way. Going back to the net pen transition, I think there's still opportunities that are coming forth, and I think some of it is really facing it's been 20, 30 years of an entrenched controversy around aquaculture, and people have very uncertain understandings of what aquaculture is. It's not a very accessible term, and because of all this heavy media campaigns, there's so much imprinting that I think has come from how the industry used to operate, and there's been so much change. And I would be more confident walking on any finfish aquaculture site today than I would across maybe many other industries. I think the attention to the environment, the monitoring, the systems in place they use some of the most modern technology, and that's not, you don't see that in other sectors. Right now, we're looking at how restorative aquaculture could actually help restore old log handling sites that have, anoxic benthic environments. Like, how can we bring back some marine plants and restore some kelp beds where we see population decline in wild kelp? Wild kelp and marine plants are super important for juvenile fish habitat. So we're trying to bring, we're putting forward the values of wild fisheries, and marine resilience, ecosystem resilience in the face of climate change. And that's where this, Indigenous Center of Aquatic Health Sciences and Stewardship, or Center of Excellence that I'm speaking to, for Indigenous, just a space for Indigenous science is so important. It is probably the #1 priority that we're trying to capture nation interests in aquaculture, nation interests in restoration, and being involved in these resource sectors that really descended onto nations' communities and had so much damage to them, and never had opportunities for First Nations to be participants and active authorities. So going back to what Don and Nellie have spoken to, like, it is the nation communities that have experienced the greatest impacts in their local environments. And it's time that we face that and create more space for them to be more involved.
Absolutely, thank you. Does either Don or Nellie have anything to add to that?
No, I just want to say that, well, I said, yeah, I should say yes. I just want to say, first of all, I really support the messages by both Aaron and Nellie as well, and that basically it is all about, in Canada, I know we're speaking with audiences around the world, but in Canada, Indigenous people have won many cases that allow them to exercise, like court cases, Supreme Court cases that in law show that we have a say in what goes on in our traditional territories. So that's why the development of our own laws and exercising our own jurisdiction is really critical going forward, because this is part of what's included in law. And the other thing I want to say is that in Canada and in BC, where there's a lot of aquaculture, we have the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Acts that have been, these are legislations now. The UN Declaration is legislation in Canadian law. So we do have a say in what goes on in our areas because of that. So it may be different in different parts of the world right now, but we have the law recognizing that we do have jurisdiction. And so I think that that's an important part of that. And I also, want to say that we've been very open to having public tours in our aquaculture operations as well, because the individuals who operate ours are the Indigenous owned operations have always been very, very careful with the industry. And like the industry has evolved. There's many new advances. And I think people are still looking at some of the bad actors from previous years who haven't done a good job. And again, I think just with all, when we're looking at climate change issues around the world globally, I think it's Indigenous people who are going to be helping to get this world back on track. And that includes in various industries, including aquaculture. So I think it's really important for our people to be involved in all of these aspects of development globally.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. So our comment section has been buzzing with questions since the beginning of this discussion, and I'll just like to ask some of them. We've moved over now to our Q&A segment. If you have more questions, please put them. Our panelists will be able to answer them, even if we cannot take all of them right now. So first question says human rights and environmental due diligence has been a trending buzzword in the global business community. Could you please share your advice on what the business sector / supply chains actors should do as part of their due diligence in consideration of the Indigenous communities? I'll throw that to Dawn.
Well, I think that it's really important for the business sectors and the supply chains to get to know the Indigenous people and communities in their area that they're working in or that they wish to work in, and start talking with our communities first before they make any plans, before they start doing any business development or exploration or whatever they're planning to do. I think or for the existing businesses that are out there who haven't developed relationships yet, I think it really helps when you start to get to know the communities and what the aspirations are, the services that they have in place. And there's the potential workforce that we can also provide. But I really feel that because we've been left out of a lot of these processes in the past, and as I just mentioned a few moments ago, there's laws in Canada that require our involvement now. We have to, as part of the UN Declaration, there's a requirement for free, prior, and informed consent for any developments in our area. So it's really, really critical for industry and governments to sit down with us to talk about any activities that may be proposed that could impact our people, because we have to have a say in that, and we want to know that these are done in an environmentally safe manner. So this is critical. They should start to reach out and make those relationships with our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you. This question is directed to Erin. How can we take the lessons learned in dealing with First Nation aquaculture and translate this into support for or encouragement of aquaculture by Indigenous people of the Caribbean?
Well, I think it's clear we should just have a conference and workshops and exchange information. So, yeah, I would like to learn more about the Caribbean circumstance, and I'm looking forward to the next session. But yeah, I think more and more, I think there's importance to bringing Indigenous communities and together to discuss challenges and collaboration and information sharing. I'm a bit, and just from that last question, the global investment climate for seeking, environmental climate solutions through such industries like aquaculture, whether it's biodiversity, increasing and maintaining biodiversity, or topics of carbon sequestration. I have concerns around, just in, the idea of farming investors and pools of investors coming together, but not being grounded in Indigenous and local communities and their values. So from our region, we have organizations that we work with that are strong partners, and not every community is going to be able to respond to every company out there. Our capacities are full. So we have partners out there that are in good spaces and making progress. And yeah, I think that there's, through the government of Canada as well, there's affiliations, and I'm sure Don could probably speak to this as well. But yeah, I think that's the future, the next 5-10 years, as there's more guidance around meeting environmental, social, governance goals for the corporate sectors, as well as government commitments for environmental, social development goals as well, ESDG goals. I think that we can, bring Indigenous communities together and work together better with some investment and investments in stewardship.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, thank you. I'll ask Nelly this. Where do you see the best opportunities or low-hanging fruit for incorporating First Nations and Indigenous laws and principles into the modern sector?
Right now, when we're talking about the low-hanging fruit or the opportunities, is that, as I mentioned earlier, when we started on the journey of developing the great fish law known as Chinook-Nagawin, or Gigo Chinook-Nagawin, we did work with industry. We did talk with them about this, and we definitely have talked with and been supported by our federal government and our provincial governments as well, and we've engaged them all along the development of these laws. And so one of the things, of course, will be in the area of the testing of the waters. As I mentioned earlier, that's the easiest place to go, because one of the things is that right now, the companies can test their own waters. But I think knowing that having a third party, such as our Center of Excellence, going in to test the waters is something that they agree should be done. And what I like about it is that this Center of Excellence will also report to our leadership, our First Nation leadership, our chiefs and councils, to talk about, what the reports are telling us and these tests are telling us. And we'll be able to put those in layman's terms so that our communities fully understand what the test results mean. Because some of the science has already been sent to our communities, but nobody can decipher it. You have to hire somebody who understands that knowledge. And so to me, the low-hanging fruit will be just to make sure that our people understand what the impacts are of some of these operations in our waterways. So I think that's the first thing going forward. And I know that the communities are, not just the communities, but the businesses that we're working with are fine with that. They also want to know, how can they improve? And we can work with them on improving if there's any issues that are found. So I think it's more of a collaborative type of process that we're looking at when we're implementing the Gigo Chinook-Nagawin, and having the support of a Center of Excellence to facilitate the work that's going to be done in implementing this great law.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And I see Nellie's unmuted. I don't know if she had anything more to add.
Nelly, do you want to add to that?
Sorry about that. I don't know what was going on with that. No, maybe I'll add later, just because I missed and I got a little frazzled from what just happened. So I apologize for that. And thank you, Don and Erin.
That's okay. So thank you to our panelists for such an insightful conversation. I'm sure I speak for the audience when I say that we learned a lot from this conversation. There are still questions in the chat box, and I'll invite our panelists to answer some of those questions, just so that, and even for the audience to throw in some more questions, please. The conversation doesn't have to end now, so let's keep it going.